This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to
Good
MS
morning.
There is Hope. Good morning. Our guest today is Emily. Emily, what's your last name?
Gibson, like the guitar.
Emily Gibson. Emily has just started the Coimbra Protocol, and we're going to do something new. It takes a lot of faith on my part and Emily's part to do this, but we're going to walk through. But that's how confident that I am that as we walk through this, that we're going to see Emily get better. Which Emily's disabilities aren't a lot. A lot. Everybody is at a different point with their MS. Some people get diagnosed quickly and then wait. Some people get diagnosed quickly and start. Some people get diagnosed late and wait. I mean, it's just I was diagnosed late, and then once you start to progress, you get pretty serious pretty fast. And so, probably within about 2 years, I found the protocol. Um, Emily doesn't really have that many disabilities, thank God. And she's found the protocol, and I don't expect her to see any disabilities or have any problems. From what I've seen, and in my experience, the sooner you catch this, the better. So, we're going to read a short uh, oh, I can't
Disclaimer.
think. Disclaimer. Thank you, Emily. We're going to read a short disclaimer, and I'm just going to say this before I read the disclaimer. Emily is using a protocol doctor. Use a doctor. Listen to your doctor. That's what they're there for. They've worked with patients. They're the pros, and they know what they're doing. And so Emily is working with the doctor, and I work with a doctor, and I would never ever tell anybody to try this on their own. You could hurt yourself.
Yep.
So here is our little disclaimer. This interview is from our own personal experiences, and we are not talking in specifics, but in generalities about our experiences while on the Coimbra Protocol. We are not giving medical advice or addressing your individual case. Cases and results vary using different methods. Medical protocols and methods of treating multiple sclerosis should be done with a licensed medical professional. Emily, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's going to help a lot of people. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you found out you had MS. And I know that you've been on the Coimbra Protocol now for about 2 weeks. So take
Yes.
it away.
So I'm a teacher, and I'm one of those people that probably carries a lot of stress and responsibility around. And I know that's definitely a factor. But when I was about 30, I had a bout of what they thought was optic neuritis, and it was my right eye, and it went kind of half black, and there was pain in there when I moved my eye. And my
Common,
MRI,
common first symptom, by the way.
yeah, it is. And
Um,
that's why they immediately were like, we need to rule this out. So they did an MRI on my optic nerve. They found no lesions or any issues at all. And at the time, I was dealing with a lot of stress in my life and my job. And I said, well, could this be stress related? And my neurologist said, sure. So I went and worked on my stress and did a really good job of figuring out what was going on and getting my life on a really even keel. And fast forward to the age of 53, and I was dealing with teaching in a pandemic, teaching online, the stress of going back to in-person teaching. I had been really sick with something right around when we shut down our school in March of 2020. And I was like, man, do I have COVID? And my colleague who I work closely with, she also was really sick and ended up having a lot of symptoms. I think we both had a flare up of Epstein-Barr virus from stress. And my Coimbra Protocol doctor thinks that may be a factor, that maybe the reactivation of Epstein-Barr kind of flipped the switch for this. And so I had these cycles of illness about once every month or 6 weeks. I would have a few days of fever and chill cycles, fatigue, and headaches and, just kind of digestive disruption. And my doctor kept trying to figure out what was going on. We couldn't figure it out. There wasn't anything that was showing. And then about a year later, so in the spring, February, March of 2021, I started having numbness and tingling in my feet. I immediately went to a chiropractor thinking I had a pinched nerve somewhere. And he said, no, I'm not seeing anything. And so then it proceeded to my hands, and I started getting really tired. Like I just had this lead blanket, like the ones you use at the dentist's office, when they put I was carrying that around with me. I have a very fast-paced day at my work. I'm running all over the school all day, working with kids. And with the COVID protocols, I had to go to their classrooms and get them and then return them. They couldn't come to me. So I was running all day and I was exhausted. And it wasn't until I started getting what's called the Lermit sign, where when you bend your head down, you get a shock of nerves through your body. And when my doctor heard that, he said, oh, you're going to see a neurologist and you're getting an MRI. And it showed I had a lesion in my corpus callosum and I had a lesion in my neck around C3, C4. And then a spinal tap had over 10 different bands that they're looking for, those oligonal, I can't pronounce it, but
markers kind of thing.
Yeah, and so my neurologist said, you have a very active disease at this point. And at that point, I was so fatigued. I left my job at the end of the school year because I knew I couldn't do it again until I figured out how to be well. And I was just starting at the very beginning. I started with diet and went to kind of a modified OMS diet. But I did a whole...
Clarify what that is.
OMS is overcoming multiple sclerosis, and it's just a diet. It's a pretty...
it's a swank type diet. It's a low-fat diet.
And it's low animal products.
Fish,
and it eliminates a lot of things that tend to be inflammatory foods.
Yes.
And so I kind of came to it through a roundabout way because I did an autoimmune protocol and just like I eliminated everything and slowly added it back. And now I cannot eat dairy, excess sugar, any gluten, and no vegetable oils except like olive oil and stuff. So none of the manufactured stuff, and no processed foods. And that seems to be pretty good for me. And right now, I'm pretty much symptom free. And I get a little bit of brain fog sometimes. I get something I call a brain blink, where it just feels like my brain turns off and on really fast. And that's my signal that I've kind of reached my edge and I need to stop and take a break. And if I rest at that point, it only takes me 5 minutes to reset. But if I push through because I have to finish something, I could be down for the rest of the day. I am a cyclist. I ride my bicycle a lot, and I've been really grateful that I've been able to do that and get going again, that I've gotten that strength back. I forgot one of the main symptoms at the beginning was my loss of balance. And I do a lot of work with students where I'm doing yoga or doing poses or doing things, and I was falling down. And I was like, whoa, something's wrong. And that was one of the early signs before the numbness started. So anyway, so I started 2 weeks ago on my loading dose. I'm working with my CP doctor, and she kind of scared me because she was like, things can really go, there's some dangerous things here if you don't do what you're doing. And so in the morning, I have 3 Nalgene bottles. They're each a liter, and I fill all 3 of them up with my filtered water. And then I make my herbal tea. I do whatever, and I make sure I drink all those before the end of the day. And she's not as worried about me for calcium because of my diet. So I'm tracking my calcium on an app to make sure that I get enough. Because I'm 54, I am menopause, I've gone through menopause. So she's very worried about my bone health. I go for a DEXA scan to scan my bones this week, actually. And I'm do that every year to check and make sure your bone health is okay. And what else? And so I've got my CP multivitamin, which my doctor produces. I have to take one of those 4 times a day. And then I do my vitamin D. The curious thing was that when I started the vitamin D, one of my symptoms ongoing, probably since my optic neuritis when I was 30, is just a very sensitive bladder. And often feeling like I have a urinary tract infection or a bladder infection, and I never do. Lots of pressure, lots of pain, irritation. And that had kind of been continuing. When I started the vitamin D, I got hit so hard by bladder pain. And I was just like, whoa, where did this come from? And it started like an hour after I took my vitamin D. And then it hit me for about 2 hours, and then it disappeared. And that happened for like the first 4 days. And then it hasn't happened since. And so I don't know if that was related at all. It was really, really weird.
Have you, what's been your biggest challenge thus far? Is it the water drinking?
With the Coimbra Protocol?
Yeah.
I would say it's, I think, my biggest challenge is always going to be stress, because, I'm concerned about my kidneys and the calcium and my bones and all these different layers. And so I know that stress is a huge component. And my CP doctor said, if it doesn't work, oftentimes it's related to stress. So you really need to figure out how to deal with that.
98% of the time, if you're having problems, it's because you're under a lot of stress. And you may have other things going on besides MS.
Exactly.
You probably got
Yeah.
MS and something else. But
Yeah, I know that oftentimes heavy metals go in conjunction with it. And so I've done a heavy metal protocol, and my doctor said I could keep doing that because it's dietary, and it's all good food, but it helps take out heavy metals. And I also did, like I said, some other protocols because I did a ton of research. I'm a teacher. I have a doctorate in education, so I was trained to research, by reading science and reading what's out there, and letting that percolate and come to conclusions. So that's why I picked the Coimbra Protocol, because in all of my research, all of my reading, it was like, this is the only one that is saying, we know what's going on. You have faulty vitamin D receptors, and we can, in most cases, help your body fix its immune system. So you're not just producing inflammatory products, that you have both sides, and your immune system can respond correctly. And I was like, what?
Well,
You're not just going to...
A big thing with that is you need vitamin D. And for some reason, you're genetically disposed, and so am I, that we don't absorb vitamin D. Let me put this out there. There are people that live on the equator, and people that live closer to the equator do not get MS as much. But do they? Yes. And they do because they can't absorb vitamin D. It does you no good to move somewhere where the sun's always shining if your body will not absorb vitamin D. Go ahead.
Yeah. And the thing, so my partner's a registered nurse, and so he's been with me on this whole thing, and has gone to the meetings with my CP doctor virtually. And his big question was, well, how do we know if this is going to work? Because, there are some potential dangers, and how do we know if it's my vitamin D receptors that are the problem? And my CP doctor said that we actually will know pretty quickly, because if I'm on my loading dose of vitamin D right now, and in 3 months when we test my parathyroid hormone, if my parathyroid hormone has plummeted to the ground, it's like, oh, wait a minute, it looks like your vitamin D receptors may not be the issue. And, and anything else, then it's going to be telling us what my therapeutic dose is. And so it was like, oh, so I don't have to be on this forever wondering if it's working. We're going to know pretty quickly if it's the right thing to do or not.
And this is something I want to put out there to people. This is highly effective. I will not state a number, but I've just seen in my experience it's highly effective. Does it work for everybody? No. But the percentage of people that it doesn't work for, in my experience, has been people that have short-circuited the protocol by smoking, drinking, doing drugs, or taking a hot bath, or they have something else and they think it's MS and it's not working for them. The reason it's not working is because they don't have MS. Now, that's been my, the people that it doesn't work for is few, but there are people out there that try it and it doesn't work for. But that is few and far between. I will say that.
It just reassured me because, I'm like, maybe it was something else. And, everyone's pretty sure that it's MS. There were all these different layers and the symptoms
You
were
have
pretty
classical MS symptoms.
I just am really, really fortunate. I'm really fortunate, number one, that, it was caught quickly when it really kicked in, not back when I was 30, but, when I was 53. And that I had a neurologist who was able to give me something that took the inflammation down quickly without a lot of side effects, and that I didn't have to stay on it. And I'm really fortunate that I found out about the Coimbra Protocol quickly. And so I'm kind of feeling like I'm an experiment. I am not progressed very far yet. Can we stop it so that it doesn't continue to progress? And kind of encourage people to try this soon instead of waiting, because there's this kind of mindset that I found in the medical field is like, okay, you relapse and then you can kind of go back to life and everything's fine until you relapse again. And I'm like, I don't want, no, I don't want to just cover it up. And I've been hearing a lot about this idea of smoldering MS, where it's just smoldering under the surface and you think you're fine and you're out doing your life. And then it hits you 20 years down the road and it's been progressing all that time and your body just can no longer compensate. And I was like, I don't want to do that if I don't have to. So I'm super grateful to people for getting the word out, all the people you've interviewed. I found one of your interviews. That's how I got connected to the Coimbra Protocol and found the Facebook group and did all that. So the more we can get the word out, the more that people can try. I can say that 2 weeks later, I definitely feel a difference. There's this clarity in my body and in my brain, and this kind of settledness.
Now, I told you I always take over the interview and interject
of course.
my story. But one thing I wanted to tell you is you've done something so good, because until I hit the wheelchair, which you can see the wheelchair behind me, you get real serious real fast when you hit the wheelchair and you can't walk. You've been falling down, and all of a sudden that Walls Protocol book, I was reading it from cover to cover and seeing how I could stop this, because I was progressing rapidly and I wanted it to stop. And you can see it. You can see it happening. So I tell people like you, do it now. Do it when you're still walking around. I
listened.
I can't say that enough to people that if you have it, it might not progress. It might not. I know people that have had it for years and never progressed. But let me tell you something, people. If it progresses, it's nasty. And
it gets serious really fast. I've known people.
Really fast.
Yeah, I'm a horse person, and I worked at a therapeutic riding stable, and we had several clients who had MS, and watching them progress. And this was back in the 80s. When there wasn't some of the treatments that are available now that really do kind of stop the progression in those early stages. And it was super scary. So as soon as I heard that diagnosis, I was I was scared pretty fast. And so that's why I kept looking. One of the things that I wanted to say that I thought was really interesting that I can't remember anymore. So I'm going to have to, I don't remember what I was going to say.
Blame it on MS. I used to blame everything on MS.
Yeah.
I can't
I,
anymore. But
there are so many protocols out there of all these diets and these people who say that they've cured their MS in one way or the other. And I think, they've just kind of stumbled across how to help their body process vitamin D. And, diet is such a big piece of it, and figuring out what you can and can't eat. And I just remember what I was going to say. I also have kind of this low level problem with insulin. I've been diagnosed as pre-diabetic based on my A1C levels for the last few years. And I found out that vitamin D is also related to that. And I'm hoping that this protocol is going to help my body with that so that I don't develop type 2 diabetes. And so I don't know how often type 2 diabetes and MS go hand in hand. Or pre-diabetes, but I thought that was interesting to find out that vitamin D is related to both. So.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today. I know you got to go, and I don't want to keep you too late. We just what we're going to try to do with Emily is we're going to try to walk through the protocol with her, and as she gets better, she'll get a bigger smile. And this is what I tell people. I was actually going to tell Emily, Dave, try not to smile so much, but she's already started. I used to watch Dr. Roberto Wanderlei Perez on YouTube, and Dr. Perez does most of his, he does interviews like this. They're in Portuguese. And when I started doing the Coimbra Protocol, I would watch his interviews. And at that time, he was a protocol doctor. He's no longer. But people would come in, they'd be like, they'd be sad and their head would be down. And then they'd come in 6 months later and you'd need a crowbar to get a smile off their face.
Yeah.
I mean, They were beaming. They were just full of life. And these young people go from being down and out and sad to being ecstatic. And that's the way you felt. I said I wanted to go out of here on the front porch and scream at the top of my lungs because I knew it was working. And that was within 41 days. I was a little bit longer than you. Some people within the first week can tell.
Really?
Some people it's 16 months. I mean, it all depends. I've noticed that men typically take a little bit longer. A lot depends on where your lesions are, how your body responds. So there's a lot to it. Anyway, I'm taking over the interview here. I wanted to say thank you for doing this with us. We're going to interview Emily every month or two, see how she's doing, see if she can inform us to maybe changes we can make to make it easier.
Yeah, I just think that being able to see what it's like from the beginning, and then in 3 months when I get my parathyroid hormone checked, I think that'll be super interesting to see what happens. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I always like talking with you.
Like I said, I think I'm going to put this out there a little bit sooner. At first, I was kind of like, well, we'll hang on to it for a while. And then as they start to get better, we'll put them out there. But I know people are in the same boat I was. They want to know, does this work? How do you feel? They want to know everything. And so I think we're going to put it out there a little bit sooner. People like myself, you can watch Emily and her progression and getting better and see that the protocol does work. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right.
I'm gonna go see my chiropractor now.
All right.
On my neck.
Well, have a good day. Thanks for doing this with us, and we'll check back in with you. Maybe in a month or so. I'll talk to you about it.
Sounds great.